3 weeks of action has been completed, with thrills and spills all over the place and teams picking up wins where they shouldn't. Agony, as Brexit has been completed and 8 teams remain as we head into the group stages of the LEC winter split. Welcome to the predictions for said group stage. Today we're going to be going over 4 matches of best of 3 action that could technically be 6 games, but we can't cover them because they're not fully in the works. But as such, we're going to go over the games we can, while also going over the results from last weekend. Speaking of which, we've got 3 days of action with 5 games on each of them to give some nice juicy results to. Now, if you haven't noticed, we are going up against the bot, and last week we were tied 16 points apiece. This week we are not. The deadlock has been broken by a steady 3 points, as we picked up 9 games during that weekend, dropping the Mad G2 game, SKS Stralis, BDS G2 and Vitality Koi on first 2 days, and then the third day Fnatic Stralis and Koi G2 were the other games we dropped. The bot, on the other hand, fared a little worse off, only picking up 6 games. But yeah, results down and out the way. Let's get into our first best of 3. Well, our opening matchup in these best of 3s is Heretics versus Vitality. These 2 teams faced off in week 1, where Vitality maintained an undefeated streak against them. Obviously, after that week 1, teams were all over the place in terms of ranking, and people would have said Vitality were favoured in this matchup. And while I do agree with that, with Bo having a phenomenal split and Photon, they're kind of these unsung heroes for the Vitality lineup. It's really impressive what they're doing with perks as well, being that level-headed mid laner who's kind of keeping this team molded together. I love this Vitality roster. It's actually grown on me as a whole, and I think we're going to see a lot of carnage, especially up against Heretics, who have arguably been a fairly solid team. I think this is one of the closest matchups to kind of rank, considering that they're pretty much right next to each other in the table. Well, I say that Vitality were a top seed, Heretics were like 4th. But yeah, I personally think Heretics and Vitality are going to scrap it out for quite a good game. And I've just realized all my predictions I've written down for this are in best of 5 format. But I'm going to have to quickly adapt and say 2-1 to Vitality is my prediction. And I need to change every single one I've predicted. And the bot also, I predicted them, or set up the predictions for that as best of 5s, not best of 3s. If you want to know the best of 5 result I predicted for it, it was 3-0. But I dare say it's probably going to be a close game. Not out and out stomp by Heretics. So yeah, we'll go into the next game. Up next, it's Koi versus SK. Now, I've got a lot of interest in this matchup because when it came to the group stage draw, Vitality had the choice of picking Koi or Heretics. And instead of going for Koi, the team that's lower seeded, they went for Heretics. Now, this indicates to me that Vitality see Koi as a closer matchup or a harder matchup between them and Heretics. And you have to look at how Koi have been. They don't appear to be, in terms of how they've performed in the 3 weeks. Now, realistically speaking, when Vitality faced off against Koi, they did actually lose. And that does tell you that scrims and also that result would kind of dissuade you from facing Koi. And Koi as a whole are more so built for these like textbook games where they have time to look at how they've performed against this team, use that knowledge and then adapt it into these best of threes. Bear in mind, if you mess up your strat for game 1, you don't have that sort of 2-game buffer in order to kind of bounce back. You have to adapt after game 1 to kind of beat a team, and I think Koi have that sort of setup where they can. SK as a whole are kind of untested when it comes to multiple game matchups. As a whole, this squad's very, well, it's new, it's fresh blood. I think all these teams on paper, or this team I should say on paper, have like less than 10 games in elimination best of series. And comparative to this rogue roster, or Koi roster, there's a lot more experience in that sense. And realistically speaking, I'm actually intrigued because I'm now going to bring up some Champions Queue results. Koi as a whole have very rarely entered games of Champions Queue. They've more so been focused on solo queue as well as scrimming. Whereas SK hard dived into this. They've got probably the most games aside from Astralis in Champions Queue. And that kind of indicates to me that as a whole this roster wants to kind of progress and succeed and develop as the best in Europe. And I could see this game honestly going quite a far distance. It's going to be a long, drawn-out series. I've gone with a 2-1 here, and that's purely because I can see either team winning. Koi, for some reason, have this, like, ego on them. Not ego, like, edge of them that is unpredictable right now, because teams don't want to face them, but they do want to face them because they're the lower seed, if that makes sense. And I think this SK Koi matchup could honestly be a very explosive gameplay, because the two teams as a whole, I would say, just, I'm not too hot on. I'm not too hot on either team, although, like, the form would say you should be hot on this SK lineup, and I'm not. And realistically speaking, yeah, yikes. I'm gonna say it, yikes. Anyway, my team that I predicted is Koi. I think this weekend we're going to see the return to form, the rogue roster that won the LEC come out. And that's what we need, because as a whole, the sample size is only 9 games that we've got so far. That sample size is going to grow by at least 2. And I personally think, with how Maorang has been kind of this up and down player this split, Koi could come in and explode and decimate this lineup. Because bear in mind, we are on a new patch, and I don't remember the big changes on this patch, but I think it's less Ashheimer and more so Lulu and Nami that take effect in that bot lane. And the reason I bring that up is because Ash was one of these big picks that Trimby went to during this regular split that found success, and without that, I don't know if Koi can possibly do as well, considering the fact that a lot of their strength has kind of been taken out of this matter. But regardless, I still somehow think that they'll win 2-1. So it's time for our best of 3 matchup of the week, series of the week if we want to go for it. It is gonna be Astralis taking on Mad, and you're wondering, why have I gone for this as my matchup of the week? Well, spoiler alert, apart from SK, we've covered every other team in this series, and as such, coming into this one, I kind of want to touch these two teams and discuss how either of them are in this position, because Astralis, I'm surprised, made it into this best of 3 series situation, considering they were dead last for a lot of this split. They beat out XL and they beat out Fnatic to make it here. And stylistically speaking, how Astralis has found success is through their top lane. And that's something that I'm intrigued by. Finn has stepped up considerably for this roster, considering it's quite... it feels meh, honestly, and Finn as a player hasn't had that sort of standout performance throughout his career. His last probably high was when he was playing on Rogue. You forget about the CLG days, they were shocking, let's be honest. And coming into this one, I think he's probably going to have fun here against Chasey. And Chasey is a player I've not heard too much, like, this split mentioned about him. He hasn't been this, like, out-and-out superstar for this Mad Lions roster. It's mainly been Niski that you've heard mentioned by casters with his outplays, his pentakill he got recently on Silas. It kind of indicates to me that Mad as a whole are doing something right. And not because Chasey isn't mentioned, but because if he's being consistent, holding his own in lane, then you don't need to hear about him. Whereas Astralis, you've got some bright points here. Cobby has looked phenomenal. Finn has looked quite good in the last 2 weeks. And then you've got the rest of the team just like finding their way into like success. And the reason I say that is because they're not like... Astralis as a team, you don't hear success from, and it's sad. You just don't. Whereas Mad are reeking with success. You've got players in this team that have won the title before, and this bot lane that's just absolutely mind-blowing how they're performing. You expect them to be, like, worst for deaths in this league, and yet they're, like, the third least. And that's surprising. And coming into this one, I think it's not going to be a close one at all. I've actually predicted 2-0 to Mad, just because Astralis never have made it into multiple matchups where series are a thing. And when I'm breaking this one down, I expect to be noticing a lot of mistakes from Astralis and kind of talking about what realistically makes Mad so good. That's how I feel this series is going to be, unfortunately. And that's not the reason why I chose it, obviously, as I said at the start. Because, you know, people would assume immediately, oh, I just want to do the least work and kind of break down the one that has less games. No, I want to do these two teams who are in a surprising situation with both of them in kind of a good way, let's be honest. But yeah, let's move into our last series. The last best of 3 we can cover in this video is BDS versus G2. Gonna be blunt, I didn't expect at the start of this split to see BDS hit. My initial prediction was them in 9th, Astralis in 10th, SK in 8th, and then the rest of these teams just scattered about from 6th onwards and 7th onwards, sorry. But now, oh boy, we get to talk about some off-meta mechanics that are just magical to watch. It's strange how this BDS squad plays, and it's kind of sort of due to the top side, I've got to say it. Adom's play style is he finds success in lanes, pushes them in very heavily, and then he just roams mid, which that unlocks his mid laner. And then they start to roam with Sheo and cause Crowny and Labrov to get ahead. It's impressive that this BDS style is finding some success. I wouldn't say it's the most successful thing, because teams have beaten it, but right now, going up against G2, you could argue that it's going to be a blowout for G2. They're going to just 2-0, bye-bye BDS. Have fun against either Mad or Astralis. Probably Astralis. And yeah, you'd be like, that's going to be, ooh. Yeah. But right now, I just have to say, it's probably going to be quite close. G2 using best of 5s last year to practice and learn. I think they've done that with the best of 1s using Zac mid and a whole lot of other magical things that haven't realistically worked out for them at all with that Radiant Virtue Swain Karma top draft. Oh god, G2, why do you do this to people? But yeah, they use best of 1s to learn and kind of adapt and bring experimental picks. I think they'll do the same here with the best of 3s. Going up against BDS, which isn't that big of a deal for them, I don't think, but it probably feels like that. It's a big deal, because obviously it's kind of a... So the issue with the best of 3 group stages, you've got a safety net of 1 game. Like, you lose your first game, you're down into the lower bracket, and you have 2 more matchups. I think teams will prefer to be in the lower bracket because it gets them more experience on the patch. That's my honest opinion. And so I haven't, if you haven't noticed, predicted any like 2-0 blowouts because I think these teams want to get a bit more practice on this new patch that they've entered. But regardless, my prediction's G2 3-1, not 3-1, 2-1. And yeah, hopefully, it's a close Barney of a brawl. That's how I feel it will go. And yeah, that's going to be it for this video. So apologies for any sort of gachi. I'm out of it at the moment because I'm not at work for once. But let's just say this. Thank you very much for joining me. If you have enjoyed this prediction series, leave a like down below, subscribe if you're new and there if you want to, and I will see you guys for what only can be the upper bracket and lower bracket round 2. Peace out.